Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Starting June this year, the Delhi police is planning to significantly expand its use of facial recognition in the city. This system, powered by artificial intelligence, will be integrated into municipal bodies and even resident welfare associations, all in an effort to reduce crime in the capital. Now, these plans have raised several concerns among those advocating for privacy and digital rights, who fear that the technology could be misused, especially to target minority communities. And so we are dedicating this episode to talking about Delhi Police's plans, how they're planning to integrate this system across the city, and the concerns it's already raising. And what we perhaps first need to know is that facial recognition is already being used in the capital to some extent.
So currently the Delhi police uses FRS technology, which is facial recognition systems technology, in high security events.
That's Upasika Singhal, who reported on this story for the paper.
Like, let's say, Republic Day parades or Independence Day parades, or take the G20 summit, for example. They've used it in such events, but they have also used it to investigate certain security lapse events, such as the Lal Killa riots, which took place during the farmers' movement. There was the 2020 Northeast riots, and there was the 2022 Jahangirpuri violence. So they had used it to see who these quote-unquote rowdy elements were. They have also used it to sort of ramp up security during a rally of the Prime Minister in 2019 in the Ram Leela Maidan.
But she says that apart from such high security events, the Delhi police is also using facial recognition for routine policing in 2 districts of the capital to help crack cases.
Like, there are 2 police districts, North and Northwest, where they station these mobile vans which have these cameras, and they kind of round the clock, they surveil people in high crowded areas. Like, let's say they have a CCTV feed from a robbery, let's say, they would feed the image of the culprit into the FRS system and run it by a database of their criminal dossier to identify if there are, habitual offenders who are doing this.
So this is how they're using the technology at the moment. But going forward, Upasika says that the police are planning to scale it up significantly. And it will start with the installation of 10,000 high-resolution CCTV cameras across the city.
And this is just the first step. It'll have phases where they will continue to ramp up. However, thankfully for now, police stations or district headquarters will not have access to this technology. It will only be accessible to senior officials of the police in the police headquarters. So they will get to pick and choose situations where they use this technology. It won't be automatically used to sort of surveil and map people's faces.
And Upasika, what is the pitch? What is the reason they want to ramp up this technology?
Delhi, one of the most common concerns of the citizens and the political class in general has been the crime rate in the city, especially when it comes to violence against women. So this initially was pitched as a way to bring down crime against women and senior citizens. But I think over time, they sort of decided that it should be a pan-city thing. So the 10,000 CCTV cameras that I talked about earlier, they have pinpointed certain crime-prone areas that they call where a lot of crime takes place. And that's where they will first focus on before, sort of integrating. So that was the initial pitch. But I think over the past few years or months, I think they've decided, let's go above and beyond with this.
And talk about what are the kind of things this surveillance system will be able to do for the police.
Firstly, on paper, what they say is that it'll bring down crime rates, because they believe that the presence of such surveillance will sort of deter people from engaging in crime, especially if they're focusing on more crime-prone areas. Like when I went and visited one of the vans, the policemen who operate the van, they told me that whenever we station the van somewhere, the crime rate goes down. We catch a lot of habitual offenders, but we don't catch them in the act. We generally, sort of catch bad characters of the area. So that's what they say, that it'll bring down the crime rates. And secondly, I think it's just like they're trying to move with the times. There's a push for that to integrate more technology into policing, into security and surveillance. And they're trying to be more new age about it and be ahead of the curve, And I think they're trying new things instead of just falling back on traditional policing methods.
And Upasika, how are they planning to integrate this surveillance system throughout the city?
So far, they have been in talks with the NDMC, which is New Delhi Municipal Corporation, and certain market welfare associations and residential welfare associations and railways. These are the 4 places where they're currently focusing on, where they will, moving forward, integrate their CCTV networks to the larger framework of CCTV network that they want. And apart from that, they will be in talks with the Public Works Department, like the larger municipal corporation as well. But right now, they are currently focusing on these 4 areas where they can sort of start the integration work before moving forward to other sister networks that they have.
And right now, we understand that an Israeli software is being used for facial recognition. But when they ramp up things in June, will they be using the same software?
No. So they have been using the Israeli software called Fortify with these mobile vans. But right now, the technology which is being developed by the Ministry of Information and Technology, by this research organization that they have called CDAC. So they'll be in charge of not only building the model technology behind it, but also training it with data sets. So what happens, a common problem that other countries face when they import this technology is that the technology which is imported does not recognize certain demographies or gets confused with faces in certain demographies. So they have to train it accordingly with certain data sets that they make. And so that's what they've been focusing on right now, where they are ensuring that the current technology which is being made in India is properly trained through certain data sets that the police has with them.
Yeah, and what kind of data sets, what kind of databases will this technology have access to?
So, yeah, that's the interesting part. They are training it with passport information, they're training it with driver's license information. I'm not sure if they're using Aadhaar, but yeah, apart from that, they're using the criminal dossiers that they have. So if anyone has been involved in any police case, the police maintain a criminal dossier on it. And if there's been a case against you, they might just use your face to train the AI model.
Yeah, and apart from this, you write that it will also be given access to prisoner dossiers, and it is also expected to collect and categorize photos from police sources, such as newspapers and even raid images. But when we talk about the original use of this technology, it was actually used to track missing children, right?
Yes. So in 2018, the Delhi High Court gave an order to the Delhi police that they really needed to work on their missing children cases. They acquired this software in 2018 to match images of children who've been found. Because a lot of times when you found a child after, let's say, a year or two, a lot of their facial features change or they age. So they needed to sort of match it and they wanted to do it quickly. So that's when they acquired the software for that. You could call it a mission creep, basically. What happened is that this happened in March 2018 where they acquired it. By August, they were using it to surveil crowds in the Independence Day parade. And the next year in 2019, in January, they used it for the Independence Day parade. And then at the end of January 2019, they used it to identify quote unquote unruly elements in PM Modi's Ram Leela Maidan rally. What they said is that since it was a high security event, especially the parades, they wanted to ensure that there are no terrorist elements that are coming in. So after that, subsequently, there were a series of events that caused unrest in the capital, which then subsequently the special cell and the crime branch of the Delhi police then used it to investigate these cases. And at that time, interestingly, the FRS system did not have a high accuracy rate. This was also one of the concerns which was flagged, which said that you've got an incomplete and inefficient system in place, which is being used for surveillance and it is being used as evidence against certain people. How reliable is to be seen, and it can't be, used in such a prevalent manner.
And apart from how the use of this technology is expanding, talk about the concerns that privacy advocates and tech experts are raising right now.
Well, one of the initial problems that privacy advocates flagged was that it's much more insidious than just walking out on the street and being recorded by a CCTV camera. Now, you won't just be recorded by a CCTV camera, your face will be mapped. And because of your face mapping, they can sort of track you wherever you go. So it's sort of like having a tracker on you. That might sound a little alarmist, but at the same time, these are not perfect technologies and it can lead to a lot of mismatching. There are people who have similar facial features. In fact, when I was visiting the van, I saw these mismatches taking place in front of me. And to a layman, when I saw the criminal dossier being flagged versus the person in the CCTV camera, they looked similar. And they had a setting of 80% and above matching. And this person matched like an 82%. But when they called him in and questioned him, he was a completely different person. He had a different Aadhaar card, different identity, everything. And that was quite scary because what happens if you're caught this way and, who saves you then, right? And apart from that, there are also concerns about the data sets being used by the police to train the AI model. These data sets are being made by humans who have prejudices, who have drawbacks, who have certain stereotypes in their mind. And these will reflect in their data sets. And going forward, it will reflect in the efficiency of the system.
So, for example, you're saying that, let's say, if the police thinks that a certain community or a certain neighborhood is engaged in crime a lot more, then the technology could learn that and then target those communities and neighborhoods more.
Exactly. So there is a high risk of minority groups kind of being targeted more because the police, from whatever my observation is, the police does target certain communities more and it does arrest certain communities more. So their representation in their data sets is more. So does that sort of translate into the AI model looking out a lot more for these people? These prejudices do get transferred to the AI model. The AI model is just copying whatever you feed it. It's going by the rules that you set for it. And it will reflect these prejudices. It will reflect these stereotypes. And these are concerns that need to be taken into consideration.
And with this surveillance, will people's images or videos be permanently stored in some kind of database?
So the police says no. They say that we don't have the capacity to store such huge amounts of data. They say that they're only using prison data or criminal dossier data. But at the same time, when you look through the project proposal documents that they have, it mentions passport data, it mentions RTO data, which is concerning, right? Because it's not your face out there being mapped while you're walking on the street. It is your driver's license being mapped. It is your passport being mapped. And so, yeah, I suppose the government already has your face. It's just a question of whether they use it or not. And going by their proposal, they will be using it. And yeah, they already have that data stored. So the police doesn't need to store it. They just need access to the database, which they have already.
And talk about how much money is the government planning to spend on this project?
According to the tender documents of the Safe City project, under which the facial recognition system comes in, the Safe City project in Delhi is roughly getting around 800 crores from the Nirbhaya Fund. How much is being allocated to the facial recognition system is not revealed. So, I'm assuming that a lot of it is being allocated because these are cutting edge technology. This is the frontier of technology right now in India. And I'm assuming like a lot of resources are getting allocated to this.
Okay, so one aspect of this Safe City project is trying to reduce crime. But talk about what the police say could be the other uses of this technology.
So the police is really advocating for, they really want to let you know that it's not just facial recognition that they're focusing on. There are other aspects to this AI driven security, which is they have certain provisions apart from facial recognition, like gunshot detectors. There will be around 200 gunshot detectors scattered across the city, which will flag it to the nearby police station if any gunshot has been heard in a 200-meter radius of the gunshot detector. They will, of course, be putting it up in areas where there have been gun violence. And so, apart from that, there will be crowd estimation being done by the AI model about the number of people which have suddenly gathered in an area, let's say. Or let's say that there is a highly crowded area and someone has fallen. So it will flag it to a nearby police station that there's someone who's in trouble, please go and help them. Similarly, they will try to train the AI driven cameras to sort of spot anomalous situations. So the senior police official I talked to, he told me that it'll be like training a beat officer. A beat officer eventually learns how to spot anomalous situations, even though to a layman it might look normal. But they plan to do that with the same thing with the cameras, where it can flag possible anomalous situations to the police headquarters. So these are certain things that they are really, really trying to push apart from the FRS.
And the other question is this all legal?
So, interestingly, there is no legal framework which governs this. There's no framework which allows transparency, rather. So, you can't ask the police that what is your accuracy rate. Perhaps you can ask through an RTI, but it's left to be seen whether that will be sort of under the ambit of an RTI. It does function in a gray area legally. And again, that was also one of the very major problems which was flagged by privacy advocates, which, I mean, who governs, or who decides till what end is this technology used? Will it be used is it just high security events now, or will it be in day to day areas? How many more cameras can they install? To what extent can they use this technology? Can they use it for every case? Can they use it for only certain cases? None of that is decided. None of that is being governed by any legal framework. And it's very, very concerning. There's no legal framework that says that you can't do it. There's no legal framework that says you can do it. So it just exists in limbo. Yeah, it just creates a lot of space for abuse of this technology.
Now, Upasika mentioned that this move has raised concerns among many digital rights advocates. One of them is Apar Gupta, co founder of the Internet Freedom Foundation, which had filed an RTI about the use of facial recognition over 3 years ago.
So in 2020, 2021, we filed 3 RTIs with the Delhi police.
That's, of course, Apar.
And we filed appeals because they didn't give us information. And through the second appeals, we found around July in 2022 that the Delhi police was admitting to the use of facial recognition to investigate riots in 3 different places, which were the Northeast Delhi riots, the Kisan Rally, and the Jhangarpuri riots. And they were stating that all matches above 80% are treated as positive results, and below 80% are treated as false positive results, which require additional corroborative evidence. In a way, it means that even if you're below 80% in terms of a facial recognition match, the police can still knock on your door and get to know. And they used photographs of convicts, but also dossier photographs which they have, and they didn't give us much information on it. And the interesting thing about a lot of this is that the technology was initially procured by the Delhi police to, get to know about missing children, unidentified bodies. So it was not itself intended to be something which would be used for police investigations into unlawful assemblies or damage to public property or riot kind of situations.
And Apar, according to you, what makes facial recognition different from older forms of surveillance? Why do you find this technology more concerning?
So facial recognition is very, very different from your conventional CCTV cameras. The thing is that when in a CCTV camera, you are captured in a public space. Of course, there are risks to your privacy because the feed may be going to, let's say, an RWA. The RWA chairperson may not like you, may hold a bias, for instance, against gig workers or working women who are renting properties, etc. But even then, that CCTV camera is not identifying you in terms of who you are actively as a proactive technology feature all the time. So its ability to get to know your information and movements, it's not instantaneous. Okay. It's not real time. And this is what facial recognition does. It puts a real time marker on a person as they are moving at that point in time. So the basis of this is that, one, what we can take away from this is that if something bad happens, a CCTV footage may be used if there is a FIR, there's a complaint, something goes wrong, to investigate and look at the CCTV image. Whereas facial recognition, and this is why the police departments want to deploy it, is real time identification of the movement of people at that very place. In a way, it is to prevent crime, which they state, but in fact results in a positive identification of people in terms of their movement, in terms of who they meet, in terms of where they are, where do they locate against their identity, thereby presuming you to be a criminal in the first instance itself, without even a report of any criminality.
And is that what they call predictive policing?
Yes, exactly. This is the term which is being used more and more. Predictive policing, which has seeped into all kinds of technology deployments increasingly and is reminiscent of a really, really dated and bad, but like a futuristic sci-fi flick called, I think, it's a Minority Report. It starred Tom Cruise. But yes, this is the term.
And with technologies like these, the usual pitch is that they'll help reduce crime. And one common criticism, of course, is that the technology is not perfect and can make mistakes. But then the government or the police might argue, well, all new systems make mistakes. They just improve over time. So what's the harm in using it now? How do you respond to that?
I would say that technology, when it makes mistakes, it can result in very different consequences based on what is the technology and what is it being used for. And if it's being used for policing, the repercussions of what may happen when it goes wrong or it's prone to error, which is, as per the admission of the Delhi police, is a very terrible consequence in terms of a person being at least called for criminal investigation, being surveilled all the time in a way. So the consequences are very, very different. Now, it's the same thing if your facial recognition is used for, let's say, giving somebody the entitlements such as ration and food. It means that if they can't be identified on the basis of their biometric match, which is, let's say, a facial scan or iris scan, then it means they go without food. So this is why, while a phone locking or unlocking through facial recognition is something which may cause inconvenience, it doesn't result in the kind of consequences a error-prone technology, as per the police itself, when it's deployed for this. And see, quite often these things are trained on models where they will not account for a person's behavior and possibly misinterpret it. So these errors may not only be a person being misidentified as to who they are, it may also misinterpret normal human expressions as dangerous or suspicious, especially under stressful conditions like the Delhi summer or, traveling in a crowded bus. So we have to think about these things a little much more deeply, because the facial recognition system deployment in India does not have any law supporting it, which is specifically designed towards saying that you can only use it for these purposes. So there's no law for it. There's no safeguard. And we need to think about our own experience with the police authorities. And does it come from a space of comfort and trust, or does it come from a space of fear, apprehension, and also sometimes just misgivings about whether the policing function will be done without any form of financial corruption? All of these things are important for us to understand and think about, especially given there are no laws or safeguards for facial recognition systems.
And another criticism against facial recognition is that we lose the anonymity we have in public spaces. Can you talk about why that is important?
I would say that anonymity is very, very important when we move through public spaces, because just think about one or two examples I'll just give you. First is that even though you may forget that you are under facial recognition after a point in time, right? If you're lazing around in a park, do you want to be identified at all times by not only a CCTV, but by a AI-based facial recognition tracking software that for 2 hours you were lying down in a park and just enjoying the afternoon? Doesn't that make you uncomfortable? The second is that a lot of times such kind of tracking is not used only for policing which is tied to a law. It is used for policing, which is tied to a social value, which I have also spoken about a little earlier, like gig workers, for instance. Again, take the example of a public park, which may be there in a locality. And gig workers usually would like to have a lunch there, right? Will a facial recognition system, which gives an instant alert to the police or to other places, be something they would be comfortable with, knowing that this is a use of public property, or working women who may have to return late to their home and thereby themselves also create a point of vulnerability if their movements and their identity is known from the very start? It is a presumption of criminality, of you doing something wrong, or a complete absence of trust in our society if we deploy these kind of measures. So, I would say that facial recognition is one bunch of several AI technologies which we need to be careful about, especially when they impact a person's legal rights. There needs to be a legal statutory basis, which means an act of parliament which defines what it is used for. It needs to have an oversight mechanism. It needs to have safeguards. It needs to have an ability to offer a real remedy to people who are impacted and governed by them.
And a lot of people, when they hear that this technology could bring down crime, especially in a city like Delhi, they are in favor of this. What do you think they're not getting?
I think on several levels, they need to be concerned about it. The first is a lot of people don't realize that a lot of these technologies which are being deployed on the basis of tendering processes, where their hard-earned money is going. So quite often, CCTV or a facial recognition system is an alternative to an actual police officer who's deployed in your locality. The second is it also takes away money from street lighting, things which have been shown not to be privacy invasive, yet at the same time improve the law and order situation in stretches which are dimly lit, etc., things like that. And an AI system or a CCTV by itself will not improve things in terms of policing, and people know that there's a large sense of impunity which exists in the city itself, which is why crime is rising. That's because there are not enough police officers and there's not sufficient community oriented policing which happens. Any person who's a resident of Delhi can possibly tell their own experience of using a rudimentary technology such as dialing 100 on their mobile phone and then waiting for like a long period of time, at least half an hour, till a beat patrol car shows up, which shows that we are not modernizing our policing. And finally, I'll tell a person like this that, okay, you don't care about privacy. Well, why doesn't the Delhi police install CCTV cameras inside police stations as directed by the Supreme Court, right? I think there's an Indian Express story itself which says a third of CCTVs are not working in police stations. Why don't we start by fixing that first? So I would just say that facial recognition for unlocking your phone is very different from a facial recognition system which is deployed all across the city. It will track you all the time when you're meeting your friends, when you're meeting your family, when you're going out for outing, when you're conducting business, etc. Those feeds will go directly to the Delhi police. The Delhi police will have them will have your identity next to it in a real-time manner. There is no data security safeguards which are placed in law which can make the police accountable, that it's only used for criminal investigations. And I will leave everyone with the thought that what do you honestly think about policing in India and whether that criminal justice system actually works without any kind of extraneous influence or corruption? So I would just leave this thought to you. And a facial recognition system in this kind of political reality, in the world which we live in, increases the power of the police without an accountability.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.